Radio Voice Italia.
Philadelphia.
Class is now in session. Christopher Columbus University is on air from Philadelphia and broadcasting worldwide from within the shadow of Marconi Plaza. Radio Voice Italia is proud to present a recurring segment with civil rights author, professional researcher, and renowned Christopher Columbus expert, Robert Felix Petrone, Esquire.
Buongiorno tutti, and welcome to Radio Voice Italia's Christopher Columbus University, where we teach you the truth about the greatest hero of the 15th and 16th centuries, Christopher Columbus, and update you on the international efforts to preserve Christopher Columbus's legacy. I'm your host, il Professore, Robert Petrone. Today on our Christopher Columbus University segment, we have a news update. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the case of In Re Appeal of Friends of Marconi Plaza et al., the plaintiffs in that case, said Friends of Marconi Plaza et al., have filed in Pennsylvania Supreme Court on behalf of the Italian-American residents of Philadelphia an appeal from the Commonwealth Court's reversal of the trial court's modification of automatic supersedious, which preserves the status quo. Say what? Okay, in plain English, real quick, stay with me now. The city of Philadelphia, under Mayor James Kenney, applied to the city's Historical Commission to remove the Christopher Columbus statue from Marconi Plaza in Philadelphia. The Historical Commission subsequently approved the city's application to remove the statue. The plaintiffs, Friends of Marconi Plaza, these are the folks that caretake the plaza in which the statue stands, and its president and others then appealed to the Board of License and Inspection Review. The Board of License and Inspection Review affirmed the Historical Commission's decision to approve the city's application to remove the statue. The plaintiffs appealed on behalf of the Italian-American residents to the Court of Common Pleas, which, through Judge Paula Patrick, issued an order that reversed the affirmance of the approval of the city's application. Judge Patrick held that the city failed to follow and meet the preconditions and criteria necessary to remove an historically designated statue. She wrote in her opinion, quote, "It is baffling to this court as to how the city of Philadelphia wants to remove the statue without any legal basis. The city's entire argument and case is devoid of any legal foundation," end quote. That was a win in the Court of Common Pleas for the Italian-American community. Attorney George Bacchetto, Esquire, appeared as a guest in episode 17 of our show, titled George Bacchetto, Esquire, KO's the Columbus Detractors, and he talked about all of that. Well, the city of Philadelphia has since taken an appeal to the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania, a 9-judge appellate court that reviews final orders of certain state agencies and certain other designated cases involving public sector legal questions and government regulation. The city also petulantly boxed the statue up in a wooden coffin so the statue could not be seen. Under the Pennsylvania Rules of Appellate Procedure, because the city is a political entity, their filing of this appeal established an automatic supersedious of Judge Patrick's order. That means the proceedings have been stayed or put on hold until the 9-judge Commonwealth Court, or a smaller panel of that court, decides the appeal of Judge Patrick's favorable order. The plaintiffs, on behalf of the Italian-American community of Philadelphia, filed a separate motion requesting the trial court to at least order the removal of the wooden box, for heaven's sakes, that is covering the statue in its entirety, and have it replaced with a clear structure so the statue can still be protected, but at least visible. The city of Philadelphia filed an opposition to that motion to remove and replace. Well, on October 8th, 2021, the eve of Columbus Day weekend, the trial court, again, Judge Paula Patrick, granted the plaintiff's motion to remove the box and replace it with a clear covering, thereby modifying the automatic supersedious, the automatic stay, established by the city's appeal. Well, the city of Philadelphia took an immediate appeal to the Commonwealth Court, invoking another automatic supersedious of Judge Patrick's October 8th order. The following day, the plaintiffs, on behalf of the Italian-American community, filed another, this time an emergency motion in the trial court to modify any outstanding supersedious or stay and to be permitted to remove the wooden structure themselves. Judge Patrick immediately granted the emergency motion authorizing the plaintiffs to engage a contractor to replace the wooden structure with something see-through. Well, the city filed its own emergency application with the Commonwealth Court late that afternoon, demanding the court reinstate the automatic supersedious to prevent the removal of the wooden coffin. The plaintiffs were provided about an hour to submit any opposition, and at about 10 o'clock p.m. that same night, the Commonwealth Court issued a per curiam order, that is, a unanimous order, reinstating in full the October 8th, 2021 stay, preventing the removal of the box. Well, on October 20th, 2021, the plaintiffs applied themselves to the Commonwealth Court for an en banc re-argument. That means re-argument in front of all 9 judges of that court, not just a panel of a few judges, and for reconsideration of the emergency order reinstating the stay on removing the box. The city, of course, opposed the application, and on November 1st, 2021, the 9-judge Commonwealth Court denied the plaintiff's request in an unsigned per curiam order. Well, so that brings us to our news today. On November 8th, 2021, George Paquetto, Esquire, and his law firm took this matter all the way up to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, comprised of 7 justices, we don't call them judges. In a legal brief signed and filed by Attorney Paquetto, the plaintiffs informed the 7 justices of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court that the 9-judge Commonwealth Court abused its discretion, resulting in an egregious error causing irreparable injury. That is, it allows the city to procedurally game the system by negating any orders by the trial court that preserve the status quo and hinders the trial court's power, granted to it by the Pennsylvania Rules of Appellate Procedure, to modify any automatic supersedious or stay. The city has yet to file a response to the plaintiff's Supreme Court applications. No doubt the city's attorneys are, as we speak, scrambling to cobble together some answer in opposition. More on this matter to follow. And for the substantive portion of our program, we have a special guest who will be speaking to this matter specifically and matters surrounding it. Mr. Donald Sabatini, Esquire, a lifelong resident of Philadelphia, a true Philadelphia lawyer in the noblest sense of the term, and current president of the Philadelphia chapter of UNICO. Don, hello. Thank you very much for appearing on Radio Voice Italia's Christopher Columbus University, and welcome to our show.
Hello, Rob. Happy to be here.
Great. So tell our listening audience, for those who don't know, what is UNICO?
UNICO is a nationwide service organization for people of Italian descent. It's actually the Italian word unico, which means unique or one of a kind, but most people here in the United States say UNICO, so we call it that. It was started in 1922 by Dr. Anthony Vastola in Waterbury, Connecticut. Dr. Vastola wanted to raise money for the purpose of constructing a nursing school, and he approached various service organizations to help him do that, and none would have him because he was Italian. So he started his own UNICO. It's now a nationwide organization. There's 2 chapters in Philly. I'm the president of the Philadelphia chapter. There's also a greater Philadelphia chapter. And the difference between UNICO and other Italian American organizations is that our primary mission is service to the general community, and our secondary mission is promotion of our Italian culture. And for both of those missions, we've been promoting and supporting substantially the Philadelphia Columbus Day Parade for quite a few years now.
Right, and that's the 1492 Society that technically puts that together. So UNICO has been a funder of theirs, more or less?
Yes, I'm not a member of the 1492 Society, but I've been attending the meetings, again, representing UNICO as a substantial contributor and member of the parade community. Our members have served as marshals and organizers on the ground of the parade for at least 6 or 7 years as well.
Oh, wow, that is fantastic. Now, you've been to a great extent boots on the ground also in Philadelphia in the fight to protect our Christopher Columbus statue. So just so our listeners can sort of have an image of it in their minds, can you give them a physical description and a little bit of a background about our Christopher Columbus statue?
Sure. Our statue was gifted to the people of Philadelphia from the people of Italy at the time of the American Sesquicentennial in 1876. And so it is an antiquity. It's been here in Philadelphia longer than the statue of William Penn's been up on top of City Hall. For the first 100 years of its existence, it was in Fairmount Park, a sort of out-of-the-way area. Not many people could see it. In 1976, then Mayor Frank Rizzo moved it to Marconi Plaza location where it is today, in an urban park in the center of the Italian section of Philadelphia, South Philadelphia. The statue with its base is about 20 feet tall, I would say. About half of that is the stone base, and the second part of it is the statue itself. It's white marble, and it is surrounded at the base. It has been for a long time with a wrought iron 6-foot fence with a gate in the back.
So the story that you've told about how it was erected, this I think is a common story I'm learning all around the country. The Christopher Columbus statues that appear or once stood in various cities around the country had a similar story. They came about around the same time. They were often gifted to those cities by various organizations or government agencies in Italy, or philanthropists in Italy. And so I think a lot of what we're going through with our fight to keep the statue where it is really rings for people in other cities, because they've experienced the same thing regarding a statue that came about in the same way. Now, when this whole debacle started in June of 2020 with Philadelphia Mayor James Kenney planning to remove the Christopher Columbus statue, where were you? Do you remember where you were on the night that, you may not remember where you were on the night that Kennedy got shot. we weren't born yet. But where were you when Kenney tried to take the statue down?
Well, like a lot of Philadelphians, I was at the Jersey Shore, about an hour away, with my father, and we started getting reports. I can't recall whether it was TV news reports or also, I believe we also had calls from local people that we knew that were in the city about a crowd assembled at the Columbus statue in Marconi Plaza, and there were rumors, which we had sources that were informing us that Mayor Kenney was planning a midnight move with no notice or due process. And as he had just done that to the Rizzo statue, taking it in the middle of the night with no process and just a sneaky move, it was believable. We believed he was going to do it. And my father and I said, we said to each other, let's just drive back to the city and see firsthand what's going on. And that's what we did.
And so, see, this is, again, what I'm talking about. This is what happened in other cities. This sort of under the cloak of night attempt to remove that city's Christopher Columbus statue. It happened in a lot of places, all at the same time, all in 2020 during those riots. Mayor Lori Lightfoot of Chicago and the Mayor Ross Baraka of Newark, they all were operating by the same playbook. And there's something really sinister about that all of these mayors were doing all the same thing at all the same time in all the same way in an attempt to remove these Columbus statues. Now, there was the conference of Italian-American leaders that night that got together at Poppy's. Can you tell us about that?
Well, the conference wasn't that night. Now, that night, George Bacchetta was able, late that night, early that morning, to get an order from a judge to prevent Kenney from doing anything with the statue. So nothing happened that night, fortunately. And it was within a few days, Italian-American leaders in South Philadelphia pulled a conference which held at Poppy's restaurant. I attended as representing my group, and numerous other Italian Americans came representing their groups or themselves, and all the people and groups pledged money for a legal defense fund, and that's how this got off the ground, our legal challenge.
Right, and that was the federal lawsuit?
No, that was the lawsuit in common pleas court against Kenney, which of course George Bacchetta had already obtained the stay to stop the move of the Columbus statue. And then it led later on to the federal suit regarding Rizzo statue and a few other peripheral suits.
Right. Yeah. The Columbus removal of the Columbus statue and the elimination of Columbus Day, they're also a part of that federal suit, as I know that you know. And in the larger federal suit regarding all of these various acts of discrimination against Italian Americans by the city of Philadelphia and its mayor, the original plaintiffs in that suit were the 1492 Society and the secretary of the board of that organization, Jody Della Barba, who appeared on our show. Also, Councilman Mark Squilla joined in that suit. And then ultimately, the Conference of Presidents of major Italian-American organizations joined in that suit. That's an umbrella organization, for our listeners who don't know, of Italian-American organizations. Now, UNICO has since joined the Conference of Presidents. Isn't that right?
Yes. And just tell you, the purple, there is one other suit, which we've won. There's another Columbus monument on the waterfront at Penn's Landing. It's not a statue, it's an obelisk. And the people that run that area now had decided to cover that with a plywood cover. So it could not be seen the name Columbus, which violated the maintenance agreement that had been signed when it was put up. And George Bacchetta went into common police court to enforce that maintenance agreement, and that cover is now off. So that's another victory which we've had.
Yeah, that was a great victory. And one of the things that was particularly troubling about that was they didn't just cover up Christopher Columbus's name, but they covered up the names of about 50 Italian Americans and Italian American families who had contributed to have that obelisk erected. So it was really not just an act of damnatio memoriae against Columbus, and it could have been, but it was an act of damnatio memoriae against all Italian Americans by just hiding those final vowels as much as they could. And so it was, as you said, a great victory when that cover came down. Now, when you heard about the court order that George Bacchetta, Esquire, obtained to remove the wooden cover around the Christopher Columbus statue in Marconi Plaza, where were you at that time?
Well, I was at the statue. It was a Saturday. Now we had I wasn't 100% aware that George was going for a court order, George Bacchetta, to allow the 1492 Society who were attempting to take it down. I was under the impression that he was going to try and push the cities. The standing order had been that the city had to take it down. So I was a little surprised, but that order came down around 3 p.m, and we presented to the police an electronic format on the phone, and that wasn't good enough for the police.
So who else, besides you and some police, how many police officers were there? Who else was there? Can you describe the scene, the populace that was on the site?
Sure. So there were maybe initially there's always a police officer there guarding it at this point. At that point, there were maybe 3 police officers. And there were several dozen people. George Bacchetta was there, representatives of the 1492 Society, and other people that have been involved with the statue that knew about the lawsuit and what was going on.
Okay, so go on. So you had the electronic version of the order, and you showed that to the police, and then what happened?
Well, they did not want to honor that. So a woman went to, I don't know if she went to an office or a store, and she got a printed paper version of the order, and the police officer was handed that, the police officer in charge. Mm-hmm. And they started hemming and hawing that we need to get authorization. We have to call this one. We have to call someone. And I pointed out to them, the authorization's in your hand. You have an order signed by a judge. I don't know who is above that in the hierarchy. But we had another problem in that the person that was supposed to come with a bucket truck to actually physically take on our behalf, on the 1492 Society's behalf, to actually take the plywood off was delayed. So at some point after waiting, I had a ladder and some tools nearby at a house I was working. When I left to go get those, when I returned, I found that another person had the same idea, and they had some tools. They didn't have a ladder, but they had climbed over. I talked to this person. They had climbed over the wrought iron fence and began taking screws out, and the police officer told them, if you don't stop immediately, we're going to arrest you. We made another attempt. Someone had a reciprocating saw with a metal cutting blade on it. So we went around to the back where there's a gate to the wrought iron fence, and we began to cut the lock, and the police again said, if you continue doing that, we're going to arrest you. So at that point, myself and the 2 other men decided we would stay until this matter was resolved, and we set up chairs by the back gate that I was just talking about. And at that point, the police took some bicycle barricades that they had for parade in the next day, and they built an outside perimeter around us. So there's the wrought iron gate, there's us with our chairs by the entrance, and then they put these barricades around the outside.
All right, so now let's recap this for the listeners, because so here is a respected attorney, right? Don is a respected attorney in the city, and the police have a court order in hand, telling them that the 1492 Society is permitted to take down the scaffold, the wooden coffin around the Columbus statue. And Don, as an attorney in Philadelphia, and as a sort of an ally of the 1492 Society, is attempting to comply with this order, and the police are simply refusing to honor a court order and not giving any reason. And when pressed, they're making. Did they give a reason why they wouldn't obey the order?
No, and George McCarter was there too, on scene. No, they just kept saying, well, we have to talk to this woman. And I was saying, well, how long we have modern communications? It's hours are going by. How long is it before you're going to talk to whoever you have to talk to? And they just kept saying, they really never gave a straight answer until eventually they were able to buy enough time for the city to go into court and appeal and reverse the order that we had.
So you're having this. You're sitting. You're trying to get the box down. They're making threats to arrest respected attorneys. They're using dilatory tactics, pretending that they need to get authorization as an excuse to ignore a legitimate court order, and then they proceed to put. Folks who don't live in Philadelphia may not be able to picture these barricades. These barricades look like prison bars. Okay, they're only about waist high. But they're about maybe 25, 30 feet long, and they're barred railings. They look like prison bars. So they're basically building a prison around you while you're sitting there guarding the statue and waiting for this phantom authorization that the police say they need to get, despite having the authorization in paper form in their hand. So this is ridiculous. And not only that. Listeners, as Don has told us, there is typically a single officer guarding the statue. Now, guarding the statue from whom or what, we're not really sure. Presumably from those who would seek to harm it. But on the day that the Italian-American community comes out to take down the coffin, there are 3 officers there, not 1. And so the Italian-American community is considered to be by the city a bigger threat than those who would seek to destroy the statue? Is that the message?
3 initially. And after things went on for a little bit, there was as many as 7 or 8 there.
Unbelievable. So we are portrayed, at least the subtext of that is that the Italian-American community in Philadelphia is portrayed as a bigger threat than those who would seek to destroy city property. We are perceived as a bigger threat. All right, so you're having this sit-in inside these bicycle barricades, and they're delaying with phone calls. And about what time do the city's attorneys get their legal action in?
It was about 10 o'clock that night.
Unbelievable. I have been a practicing attorney myself for 3 decades, and it is a rare occasion that courts are operating at that hour. So they're going to emergency measures. Meanwhile, it's 500 people murdered in the city of Philadelphia, but they're going to emergency measures to make sure that wooden scaffolding is not removed from a Christopher Columbus statue at 10 o'clock at night. So what is to come regarding this situation, this whole debacle with the police? What's coming down the pike?
Well, I'm going this week. I'm going to be filing a complaint against police. I did take all the officers' names and badge numbers there. And of course, we're not anti-police, and we don't fault those low-level officers. They were following their direct commands, but we do want to I want to start this procedure to get them on record of the chain of command, who gave what command and why was it given. And this is not a complaint in the sense of a lawsuit. This is part of the internal procedures the city of Philadelphia has that a citizen can file when they believe that the police have violated that citizen's rights. And I believe they violated my rights to due process of law, and it's pretty obvious, not allowing me to follow a court order.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. Yeah, I want to emphasize that we are very supportive of the officers. I remember when the statue was stolen from St. Rita of Cassia's church. The St. Rita statue was stolen just recently. The police recovered it. They brought it back to the church safely, and we're very grateful to them for that. And we feel, I think, the sentiment is that it's not the low-level officers, it's not the officers in the blue shirts, but rather the supervisors, the brass, perhaps even the commissioner. We're not really sure. Maybe this even goes all the way up to the top. This chicanery of instructing the officers to ignore the court order. This may go all the way up to the mayor. What are your thoughts about that? What do you think?
Like I said, you mentioned the term brass. The brass doesn't have enough brass to tell the person above them that this is an unlawful order. And if they don't have the brass to do that, then they have to answer to the courts. And that's why I'm starting this complaint against police, to get that all on record.
Very well said. Is there a bright side to this debacle?
Yes, I would say there is a silver lining in some regard. As part of the court process, we had an expert examine the statute because one of our claims is that the statute cannot be moved, as Kenny wants to move it. The statute cannot be moved without a substantial risk of damage because it's fragile condition. And our expert did say that the statute is in very fragile condition just because of the effects in time and weather over 150 years. It has fissures, it has various damages. So we are going to look into protecting it, not just from vandalism potentially, but also from the weather. And if we hadn't had this happen, it might have just disintegrated on its own. So at least we've been made aware of that.
Well, yeah, thank you for all you've done regarding the statue. And in addition to UNICO's contributions to the 1492 Society, what other philanthropic work is UNICO involved in within the Italian American community?
Well, as I say, our first mission is to the community in general. And we've given to numerous charities, everything from St. Christopher's Hospital, Little Sisters of the Poor, Citizens Crime Commission. But within the Italian American community, we've been funding substantially a Italian language program at St. Anthony of Pado's Catholic Grade School in South Philadelphia. About 6 or 7 years ago, the Italian government began an initiative to promote the teaching of the Italian language, because there was a scare that the Advanced Placement Board was going to drop Italian from the AP program, and it was thought that we need to promote the teaching of Italian from the grade school level up. Right.
And the government of Italy, they're promoting the teaching of Italian in American schools, isn't that right?
Yes, ever since that scare that it was going to possibly, it has not been dropped from the Advanced Placement Program, but if not enough students take the AP test in Italian, they will drop it. So we have to try and build the pipeline of it being studied and taught so that their students will take the AP program.
That's wonderful. What a wonderful thing that UNICO is doing, and I'm sure a lot of families appreciate that. If people listening want to join UNICO, what are the requirements?
Well, you don't have to be all Italian. You have to have some Italian bloodline, or be married to someone that does, or be a stepchild of or adopted by someone that does. Okay.
And so if one fits those requirements, how do they go about joining the organization?
Well, if you go with UNICO National has a website. It's unico.org. And there's a button there you can push that says find a chapter. It'll help you locate a chapter near you. And you know what? If there's no chapter, if you can get together 15 like-minded people, you can start your own chapter. We just had one start in South Carolina.
Wow, that's fantastic. It's good to know we have an Italian-American community in South Carolina.
We're spreading out.
That's great. Well, Don, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing that experience that day in front of the statue. I'm sure there are people out there in other cities who have had similar encounters, have similar stories. If you're out there and you're listening and you'd like to tell your story, what happened in your city, you can contact me. I'd love to hear from you. And that's today's class. For more news, articles, and resources about Christopher Columbus as the first civil rights activist of the Americas, icon of Western culture, paragon of Catholic virtue, and greatest hero of the 15th and 16th centuries, visit preservecolumbus.us. That's Preserve Columbus, rendered as one word, .us, and that's where you can contact me. There is a little tab there on the side for viewer feedback. And post a little note of appreciation for our webmaster, Tom Lacosta. I'm your Professore, Robert Petrone. A presto!
Radio Voice Italia.
Philadelphia.